Today, we are here to have a session called Discover New Players. We meet by playing, lead various opportunities for changes and fuse creative ideas. 01-Day 2021's playground is not only a place where various players realizing change and innovation, but also a participatory place where everyone can be a player. We also exist as players here and suggest new concepts and definitions of play, player, and playground through experiencing and creative creation. Now, I would like to introduce our wonderful panelists, Martin Honzig, Sabine Kimmelbach, and Alain Mozo. They all have been working in the field of art and technology for more than several decades. It's a great honor to know them in person, and it would be more casual than usual today. Martin Honzig is an artist and director of Ars Electronica's festival, Prix and Exhibition Division. Martin, would you like to introduce Ars Electronica briefly before introducing other panelists?
Thank you to Jon. Thank you, 01, for this wonderful invitation and opportunity to not travel to Korea, but do it online again. Yes, I'm representing Ars Electronica here, which is an Austrian-based cultural institution that is working in the nexus between the arts, the science, the tech, and the society. Our focus is on humanizing technologies. That means that we are representing on the one side a species called media artists, and on the other side, we are these media artists. We generate a lens for the entire society to give them a glimpse, to reach them the hand of where the position of the individual in a rather complex future would be. We don't see ourselves as an art institution. We are a cultural institution, a offer to the to new educational approaches the society needs.
Great. I would like to introduce Sabine Kimmelbach. Actually, Sabine and myself were invited by Ars Electronica for one of the jury meetings. Since then, we have been collaborating and interacting each other. So thanks to Martin. And Sabine in 2012 became the artistic director of the Dhek, House of Electronic Art in Basel. So please, Sabine, would you like to introduce House of Electronic Art?
Thank you, Dune, and also thank you to 01 Festival to be here. And I think it's a very good example that networking works even if we have never met in person, but since we have been connected through the Ars Electronica jury, we have continued to collaborate online in several projects. So what is Dhek, House of Electronic Arts? It's an institution dedicated to digital culture and the new art forms of the information age. So we showcase artists and exhibition that their work is either rooted in digital or electronic technology, or that is speaking about the impact of these technologies on society at large. Apart from our the exhibitions that we are doing, events and projects, I might add that the name House of Electronic Arts is in plural because it's not only about the visual arts. We also showcase electronic music, projects that involve theater and dance. So it's a very open understanding, also kind of digital and media culture. What's very important for us is to make these technologies accessible to a huge audience. So the educational program is very important for us. And it also is what we call a standalone program. So often, of course, we do programs that go together with exhibitions and that give you an in-depth experience of what we're showcasing there. But often we also have workshops that are taking into account new developments, for example, take a most current phenomena, NFTs, and to really make people understand to the core what that actually is and how they can participate. The third aspect, which is very important for us, is that we are building a collection. We are focused on Swiss media art due to our government funding. And there we put a focus on software and net-based artistic projects, because I think that is very important that also institutions delve into these works that are so precariously to be collected. But I think we have to learn by doing and invest our time and knowledge there. Thank you.
Great, thank you. And the last panelist will be Alain Mongo. Alain is founder and director of Dhek. In 2000, he launched Dhek, a Montreal-based organization dedicated to exploration and promoter of digital creativity and electronic music. Alain, would you like to introduce a little bit more about Dhek?
Hello, everybody. Thanks for having me. Thanks for 01. Nice to meet you again virtually, Martin. We've been in touch in this way in the last 2 years. I actually collaborated with Ars Electronica this year. Dhek, yes. Dhek is a festival dedicated to digital creativity and electronic music. It is anchored in presenting performance work by artists, live performances. When people think of electronic music, they think of DJs. But our festival has always focused mainly on presenting artists and musicians performing live. So it has this, let's say, distinction. And in that form, we've always been interested in tracking, let's say, the mutation of technology, how artists use technology to expand their practice. In the name Dhek, you could see the notions of music and technology merging, but for us, the notion of mutations has always been more important. So we see the festival as tracking the mutations of the use of technologies by artists. We do have editions of the festival in different locations, as you mentioned. We've been in Mexico for over 15 years, Barcelona for over 10 years, Tokyo for over 5 years, Argentina. And I think we could see those festivals as a way to replicate the context that exists in Montreal. It's not the branching of a commercial adventure by having these editions in different countries. It's more like installing a context for something similar to what happens in Montreal to happen in those different locations. And I say that just because it relates to the notion of playground that 01 is exploring this year. We have always seen Dhek as a playground in Montreal, certainly, and it is become a way to replicate that playground in different places, this notion of a network. So that's it in a nutshell for Dhek.
Great. I hope we were able to meet all in person. We desperately needed more interactions. But still, I think we are in the midst of a global pandemic. And I hope this pandemic at least gave us some opportunities to think further on what the future looks like. And within that context, I wanted to ask all of you what change you found in 2021, especially by considering our crisis by the global pandemic.
Okay, I can go first. Well, as Martin has just said, a lot of things have changed, and they keep changing. And the question is actually all the new formats and new developments, and what of them is actually staying, as he has said. I mean, for us, it was truly important over the last years that we diversify our program, and that we are programming on site. Yes, still important, possible. We are open again, people can come. But of course, it's still hard, you know, for an international audience to come to Basel and visit our shows. So already in 2020, immediately after the pandemic hit and we were in the first lockdown, we started with online curation, online programs, and we have continued that. So two things are important for us: to stay in touch with an audience, but also to support artists during that difficult time. And one series that we started early on was called, or is called, Dhek Networks. And it's something like, you could say, micro commissions. So we ask artists to do new projects that may play out over our social media accounts, but also interventions on our website. The works that we got so far ranged from interventions on the website to face filters for Instagram or video tutorials. And I think that is something that was really inspiring also for us to see the diversity and the platforms that artists are using. So that is definitely something that we are keeping. This year, we also tried a new project that was dipping more into the, how can I say, to facilitate a direct contact with artists and the audience, and Dhek sort of be the mediator. It's a project called Net Encounters, and it was facilitated through a funding by Pro Helvetia. And the idea was more, we could also phrase it as micro performances, so that we facilitated through our website to connect artists with an audience, and they would get paid for something they would do for the audience. And an interesting example here is the work The Creature by Swiss artist ZER01NE. She offers the opportunity to anyone to commission and purchase an exclusive and personalized video work based on the information that she retrieves on a person online. And I found that interesting. It's kind of to also try to find new ways for artists to generate income. It's not that Dhek gets anything. We are more kind of like the facilitators to get them in touch. I mean, in general, I find that creativity often happens in context of uncertainty. And I see the challenge here for the cultural institutions that we need to facilitate innovative projects, and we need to facilitate also that experiments that are mostly driven non-for-profit or for no commercial interest. And I think that's where that's where we try to position in ourselves, and where we try to do the best what we can.
Great, thank you for your great feedback on the first question. Actually, I do agree. You know, in terms of where the creativity coming from. You know, the uncertainty is one of the factor you can really think of out of box. So.
One addition that I might also, if I may add, that is also the solidarity that started, you know, of collaborating and cooperating. I mean, Ars Electronica, one example, who invited everybody to become part of Ars Electronica with the garden, Kepler's garden project, where we also participated last year, and many other institutions that reached out and that where we globally shared online exhibitions, co-marketed them. I think that was also a very positive experience.
Yes, I think we can pass the mic to Martin to follow up what you wanted to share, how you you know, went through this crisis with your creative ideas.
Yeah, thank you. the question was in the last 2 years, what is actually a festival? Is it worth that we disappear, or is it worth that we create some new kind of stages for our own, for the sake of our existences, but also for the existences for those people that we represent as the cultural people, the artists? And we said, okay, good. We really were afraid that we entirely disappear. That was also the reason why I contacted Alain last year, that because I was personally afraid that if we don't create something, we would be the last one to look at. And if the politicians then would find time to look at us, we would not be there anymore. So as Sabine said, it was to create like a collaborative system where others with not so much impact, just brand-wise, like Ars Electronica has, could benefit out of this. But at the same time, and I remember a discussion I already had with Sabine in Esch, just briefly, so wonderful this was, the loyalty and this wave of collaborative energy. Everybody jumped on the train. So difficult it became at the same time if you want to open a business field for this, because to be honest, we spent like the last fall in entirely regretting to the partners, because we were for sure very proud that we had 180 partners jumping blind on this train, following us, doing this. But after, I mean, repeating this exercise would have been a sin, to be honest, because, you know, I mean, you are representing not just an entire species, that, but you are responsible for the people you represent, and you just cannot play with others' existences. So we learned out of this, and we tried to create some wisdom about this, and we tried to professionalize this in the next, or in the last September's edition, to rebalance all these efforts and what you give back. But again, the changes were that the intelligence of collaborating was actually the only key to appear on some stages, whether they were live or not live. So, but then it was that we had to invent hybrid. We had to stress this word hybridity. So what is a hybrid event? I mean, us staying a little longer in this field, we know what hybrid could be: telepresence and interactive models where we could use technology to link us and to kind of cope a little.
I think this is a good moment. We know what technology means. It is more about human than technology, right? So let him, propose a little bit, and let's do, Elaine, it's your turn, and speak about what is the creativity in the age of uncertainty.
Yes, well, in a way, I'll be repeating some elements of what Sabine and Martin already mentioned. We at MUTEC in Montreal were able to do, we did 2 editions, one in 2020, one in 2021, under the pandemic cloud, if I could say. Again, we organized something we called a hybrid edition. So we had in real life elements, and we had also some virtual elements, meaning online. We actually developed our own platform to create, let's say, a place for people to converge and have a community experience, a shared experience, a shared virtual festival experience. Again, we hopped on that bandwagon, had to position ourselves. So you have to remember that at the beginning, there was so much, let's say, streaming happening on different social media, etc. So we made a conscious decision to develop our own platform, which turned out to be an interesting tool for us. Like Sabine mentioned, what drove us to do events was mainly to let's say, support the artistic community, support, well, maintain a certain link to an audience, also maintain our international networking reflexes. And to a certain sense, to a certain extent, I would say, even hanging to a certain sense of normality, to hang into what we used to do before the pandemic, hoping that we would not lose our pre-pandemic habits when we would get out of that tunnel and be able to still be operational in a certain sense. Also, I guess we ended up doing a lot of work for the team. It was quite taxing, both last year and this year, but it was part also of this intention to support the community of cultural workers, including our team. And as we are emerging out of the pandemic, at least in Canada, it seems we're kind of emerging. We are realizing that the cultural world is the one that has been the most hit with tourism, of course. So the hybrid edition we did this year, for instance, we did realize also that there's a certain digital fatigue in terms of how people are paying or not paying attention to what's happening online after being scotched and glued to our screens. As the real world is deconfining progressively, we find that people are less willing to spend time in front of their computers and are, I would say, so eager to reconnect in real life, because there's a fear that we sense this year. Again, we were lucky to be able to host quite a number of in real life events during the festival, and we did, let's say, witness the fear of people or the reluctance of people to go back to reconnecting freely. For us, we realized we were, as I said, we were lucky to be able to do events, open air events, free events, and people would come. And it was the first time that people would kind of go to a cultural event in 18 months. And instead of going every day and kind of reconnecting in a big way, they would just come and check how they felt about it. So it's like we have to relearn how to live. And for the last thing I would say, for us, what was important is this, let's say, try to nurture the community of local artists, because of course we ended up doing mainly local contents, at least in real life. On the virtual platform, we were able to connect with and present a lot of international content. But for the in real life part of the festival, it was about nurturing the local artists. And even for the artists, we realized that they lost a little bit of their habits. And a lot of artists were a bit nervous. It was the first time they would perform after a year and a half. So even for them, it was kind of a not so steep curve, but there was a certain challenge of coming back into real life circulation after being isolated for so long.
Great. We just talked about hybrid form of the environmental changes. And obviously, we are also facing to have more hybrid form of the players. And what does it mean in terms of the technological development of AI and blockchains, and how do you see the new concept of or new role of artists in this development?
Yeah, there is a role in this development. which is good. So there is a role, and I think it is about defining the role of the technology, but also for what the artists should do there. And just quickly as a reference, what happened in the last 5 years. So it was actually we are very privileged to be as institutions so close and permanently so close to a process of transformation, coming from only one technology, this artificial piece of intelligence. So when I just look back how it started, it really literally started with a new technology appearing on the horizon, and artists and almost everybody were just curious to start to play with it. So I always call it finger exercises. It was about making the instrument, the technology to an instrument, and it was really lousy starts. Still today, I think it's not. We are not talking from a substantial, real, huge number of qualified artists working with the tool and utilizing the tool as that, so that it makes sense and it's not just a unreflected way of how to play a guitar without knowing it, you know. So there was this style transfer thing that in between where people appeared and say, my God, I mean, this is a new competitor. We are entering a future where reality would look like that, dominated by artificial intelligence. And then we had an AI created art piece at Sotheby's being sold by I don't know how many 100,000 euros. I think as a professional coming from the art world, if we don't stop talking about that AI would be a competitor for the sake of the arts, we really lose the train for the real essential questions out there. Because and this is also what we see now. Artists are now more acting as art as science, so to speak. So they are really deep in the field. They are professionals and they could easily live on the other side, if we want to call it like that. But what they are able to is to show us what this tool, what the capacity, the potentials and the risks of these tools are, and where, so to speak, the limitation of our thoughts could be broken insofar that where we want to see this technology in the future around us. So I think art is currently stepping in and doing this exactly what it should do, to show us what we are doing with this technology. But I don't think, and I'm not afraid that AI would ever take over making art or so, because, you know, art as that didn't start it on a so-called market. It started as something that is a result, an achievement of the creation of culture itself, and that you are in a second step are looking for some audiences is not immanent of why humankind, the individual, is doing art. Is my opinion.
I am as hopeful as Martin. I think that artists are always interested in, society at large. They have always used the tools that are developed in the time that they are living in. And in terms of artificial intelligence, I think the role of the creator is still absolutely clear, and that's the artist. I mean, it's a misunderstanding, you know, we call it artificial intelligence, but it is mostly pattern recognition systems at work, you know, that are trained on specific elements that can be tweaked and so on, and the outputs are surprising, but that's what it basically is. And most artists then, of course, also call AI as an artistic tool. Mario Klingemann, German artist, for example, he says it's the same as the piano as a tool to a musician. So he uses the guns that he is, programming them, he's tweaking them. Or some call it a collaborator. For example, the artist and musician Holly Herndon, who has trained her own AI called Spawn. And she actually lists her officially as an ensemble member for her musical albums. But she makes absolutely clear that the role of the AI it's not the compositional decisions that are made by the AI, but she's using it as one of the voices for the composition of her music. And then, of course, it's interesting for her to have this unheard sound and new elements. I would like to share an interesting example from my own curatorial practice, how that could work for the better. And I think it's as the chess player, what's his name, has said, human and AI, that is the perfect mix. Because in 2019, we did a show at Dhek titled Entangled Realities, Living with Artificial Intelligence. And we commissioned the Swiss artist group Fabric to program an AI that was logic AI, not machine learning, to plan a scenography of the show. And then we gave it information about, number of museum walls and elements of our wall system, how much lighting we have, seating opportunities, but also content-wise, which criteria would bring works closer together and so on. And then, of course, from the very beginning, I was doubtful that it would be an interesting result in the end. So I had my plan B, how we could do the show. But then when we received the first outputs from the AI, something interesting had happened. The AI treated everything fragmentized. So when I think of the needs of a work, I think of a wall, but there's no such concept as a wall for an AI. So it took all the wall elements per element, and placed one wall element here, another there. One was black colored, one was white. And then that was super inspiring for us. And then we did not do the system as the AI has proposed it, but we got so inspired that we did a fragmented scenario for the exhibition that was actually super dynamic. And we had amazing feedback from the audience saying that was the best scenography ever so far in our space. And that was something that we would probably have never come up with without this, loop of bringing in an artificial intelligence and just to give you, in a way, give you a crazy idea, inspire you for something new.
Yeah, definitely there is some sort of new types of serendipity out of the artificial intelligence coming out, and then that kind of helps us also out of box and what is the new ways of being a creative and creator. For the, I think, new expanded concept of player, I think we kind of touched a little bit on your experiences, but I think it would be good to know as institutions and organization, if there was any new learning aspect to nurture these new types of creators and with the goal as a platform for the creators.
When we commission work, it's always important for us to have a strong and continuous dialogue with the artists, sort of also to help them formulate their ideas and but also help them in the technical setup of their works. For example, last year we had a show where the artist, due to the pandemic, could also not travel, and our technicians had to actually build half of the work for her or come up with ideas how it could be facilitated. So it's basically being involved in the technical level of production, but also in conceptualizing ideas. And what I find interesting is to get involved in let's say also in a long-term process, to really follow their ideas and come back and support artists. So to follow their career and to follow their artistic output. I don't know if that was so. That's also a goal for us as an institution, to really build long-term relationships and not only have artists participate in an international group show, but to really kind of also build a strong network of artists that are committed to the work we are doing at Dhek.
But this notion of platform for me relates to something I mentioned in my introduction, is the fact that with the MUTEC Festival, we can see the festival as installing a context for things to happen. And of course, over the years, we've, let's say, refined the context, and that what the festival is about has been recognized by artists and the different players, let's say, of the scene as something quite unique, where we, again, as I said before, since we showcase live performance, that's one thing that's quite singular, like a festival showcasing mainly, if not nearly exclusively, live performance. And we're also always interested in performance that explore the use of new technologies. I mean, I'm not sure I like this notion of pushing the envelope, but it says what it says. It's always about having artists pushing the envelope, trying new things. And so over the years, I think we've established ourselves as this kind of platform or playground for artists. And artists know that. And since we have 50% of content coming from the local national artists and 50% international, there's two processes there happening. For the national and local artists, we have a call for proposals. And artists actually know that if they want to perform at the festival, they have to present a new project. So we end up showcasing a lot of world premieres from national artists. And it's quite clear that the way that we work with MUTEC is we take a lot of risks. In a certain sense, we support, we accompany the artists in the development of new ideas. So we kind of take a risk by showcasing a lot of new works that don't exist when we decide to program them in the festival. And we nurture that relationship. And sometimes it takes the form also of a sort of commissioning that comes out of a dialogue with the artists, and where we encourage the artists to actually explore new territories. And on the international side of programming, it's a bit similar. There's two gestures. There's one where we have our group of curators, both in Montreal and in the different editions of the festival, that work as antennas and monitor interesting developments, interesting works by artists that we feel we need to bring back to the festival to be part of this larger dialogue. And the other thing is also on the international stage, artists have become to identify MUTEC as this kind of interesting platform to showcase new stuff. So artists contact us when they have new ideas, and they ask us, are you interested in doing this? A good example of that is a work we presented like many years ago, was the ISAM performance by Amon Tobin, which ended up being a quite impressive stage design using mapping and all that. But that project took about 2 years to develop. Nobody understood what it was about. Actually, we all discovered the night of the premiere what it was about. And it became quite of a success and a landmark in itself. Another example is a piece we presented, a dance piece by Daito Manabe and the Rhizomatics, discrete figures which integrated robotics, mapping, and AI. And it was a premiere we did in Montreal. Actually, the whole team came here. They did 3-4 days of development, and we ended up presenting this piece, which was never done before. And so it's this kind of relationship with the artist that leads to, let's say, new projects.
Great. You know, I think, Martin, you have more to say about this being a platform, as Eraslic was one of the early models of being a platform for the artists in art and tech.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, providing a platform is the one side, but being a platform and a sustainable platform is the other piece of art. But for us, it was that we had to, I mean, we had before the pandemics already such a wide range of, let's say, formats or formats that could create like encounters or bridge or create bridges. So it was about to evaluate what would still fit in the times of pandemic, but as well as on a platform, because we haven't been a platform for the entire time. We were very traditionally curatorial orientated, so to speak, organization, but we had to change this. So just to announce, to name some, the Pre-Ars Electronica in itself is, so to speak, in whatever situation artists would find themselves, one of those samples where you can see process, and because there is no topic, and this is really a wonderful established price that has been working fully also in times of pandemic. Nevertheless, we saw artists not submitting because they saw, so to speak, in their rhythm that they saw no market where to sell the piece or themselves, then including the piece, and that's why there was a bit of a shyness and uncertainty from the artists. And then even better fitting is this STARTS initiative that we have, where it is about to prove what artists could do in the other segments of life of a holistic one. So specifically in science and industry, what artists are able to bring in the sense of alternative ways of innovation on the one side, and at the same time what this stepping out of the bulk of the arts is doing with the self-understanding of arts and the definition of arts. So this is always something you have to keep in counterbalance. That is one sample, but and then looking at the many hybrid formats that we invented, what was very successful was that we saw many artists who simply had not their normal tools in their hand, and not the places that are required to do what they have been doing all the time so good and professionalized. So we were thinking of spending redirecting the same dedicated money, so to speak, for creating an art piece into another format. And what was very successful was that we invited artists to make a movie, so to speak, a short movie about their intentions, about in what situations they are currently. About what they normally would drive them to a outcome called art piece. And that was, as an experiment, it was insane and overwhelming in the most positive way, because sure, the artist's mind does not necessarily mean that you become now a movie maker, but it all turned out to be very interesting experimental movies. So we created by coincidence a new format, so that artists coming from different fields would invest their energy and resources in creating a movie where they are not professionalized in. That ended up in something very interesting, very colorful, and that created again an aspect of common at the festival. And and many more. Just the university format, or this entire garden system that we established, was one that at the end had like 3 targets, and that was creating new publics for using the situation to experiment with new publics. Let's say it like that. As Alain said before, entering new territories, and at the end, all this should come together in creating new business fields for ourselves, the cultural sector, and the single artists as they are out there.
Great. I think we've been talking about this hyperconnectivity, and as well as national, international, what is local, and also global. So I think during these 2 years, we've been really developing, as you just mentioned, about the new public and new ways of collaborating and also sharing the ideas. So I think I want to have some kind of your thoughts on what could be a sustainable good local, what is global and at the same time local, in terms of your development of the institution, and what is a new strategy for that, especially as a as you said, to be the platform. Yeah, maybe you can start, and then we can go Sabine and Alain.
Okay, I continue until my internet breaks away again. Yeah, what we continue with, and it is that as Electronica for sure will stick on this strategy of this metaphor of a platform. We will stick on this formats of garden, but we would put we will reevaluate this and learn out of the many mistakes that we did, even in the last edition. It is also, I think, important that in connecting the international with the local, is that so for us in our self-understanding, we enlarged this triangle: art, science, and society to this aspect of our of the status of our relationship towards our environment, our nature. And I think this is important. So what we created as a common at the last edition was this project that we called Eat Soil. So where we were asking the partners to send us a photo of the soil they are standing on, the ground they are standing on, and how they kind of taste this, and to give us a little bit of, to give us a half-minute video to try to explain how this tastes. That created, like the garden metaphor, immediately a common between the international and the locals. And it was also due to the title of this year's festival, the New Digital Deal. More than ironic that we set this project in the epicenter, because what we thought that any digital deal that is desperately needed is in direct connection and relation to how we treat the soil we are standing on. So this is, the digital is no place to escape. It is, so to speak, a next logic evolutionary layer in the evolution of humankind, and it still is fed by drinking water, the cooling machines, and there's so much complexity inside. But again, how we should link the regional with the international, how it is, so to speak, one part of an immanent bigger picture. It is the same metaphor like the digital with the soil. We have to understand that everything is, so to speak, related, and the more we understand the individual situation, the more we use technology better to make us to bring us in communication about that, the better we can utilize this the common problems and the diversity and the diverse situations we find ourselves, because there will be no general solution for the everything. A solution for the everything can only come because of many micro solutions, and that is what we saw, and that could be also a wonderful metaphor for what a festival in the future is, what culture in the future could be.
Great. I know, Sabine, you have been also having a lot of hybrid types of projects during the pandemic, and it would be great to learn more about it.
No, let me start saying, like, especially against the backdrop of climate change and the threat of a climate catastrophe in the near future, we should and have to rethink many ways of our acting. In terms of the question, I think it's again to diversify as an institution, to have projects on site and online, and as has been mentioned now many times, hybrid formats. And my experience over the last year has been that the audience is totally fine, and is getting used to the format of hybrid, to have part of the panel is physically on stage and some are just digitally there. It's not really such a problem. Of course, we want to travel, but I think we have to to really think what makes sense. In which case, I would probably, it makes no sense to fly to Beijing for a 1 hour presentation that could also be done via Zoom. But then it makes sense to bring artists to Basel, because we organize also a workshop for them and, connect them to other institutions, maybe also have them being involved in a program at the local school and so on. And I think we have to think more in these contexts and wider contexts. What do we facilitate, with whom? How does it make sense? It's also more sustainable, to have someone, maybe then you can even share the costs of a flight. So I think that's something we have to learn to collaborate to make sense. If we go places, that it's really worth a trip. And yeah, and I think that's for me the global kind of to think and act, to think local, act global, and bring it together in the best way.
Great. Elaine?
Yeah, it's interesting question. I mean, when we started to develop our platform and go in hybrid for the pandemic, actually for us it was going back to something we used to do at the beginning of the festival. During 10 years, the first 10 years from 2000 to 2010, we actually streamed some of our contents. Sometimes it was more, it wasn't audio-visual stream, it was more sound, but streaming the festival and archiving also the recordings of the festival were part of our strategy to reach audiences from everywhere. And we already had this idea of reaching a virtual community, because actually we had this belief that our public was not just Montreal public. Actually, the Montreal public never really was enough to sustain a festival like ours. So we had to embrace a larger audience. And it's by going hybrid in an early form, let's say, that we reached that. And it kind of worked, because when we did one of the first editions of the festival we did outside of Montreal was in Chile. And we encountered an audience there that was very knowledgeable about MUTEC, just because they were following, or they had been following what we were streaming and all that. And we stopped doing that after about 10 years, because we wanted people to come to Montreal and live the experience, the festival experience on site. And we felt that by streaming, it was an incentive to maybe stay home and not come to the festival itself. So it was an interesting twist of things that we went hybrid again after, let's say, not doing it for about 10 years. With this idea of reconnecting, finding ways of reconnecting with our virtual audience. Now, the pandemic was a big, let's say, trauma for everyone. And I think it did start to induce this idea that the results of the pandemic were going to create like a huge shift in things. But I don't know about the others, but my impression is like, if we come out of the pandemic soon, we will just go back to, people will try to go back as soon as possible to their pre-pandemic habits. But then we have this new cloud. It's not a new cloud, but there's this cloud that's getting darker and darker, which is the climate change, as Sabine mentioned. Deep down, I think we all know that things have to change. The pandemic, we could see it as an opportunity to jumpstart a lot of those changes. But I'm not too sure, we're still hanging to a lot of pre-pandemic habits. So I'm not sure how that is going to settle. And again, like the economic forces are in action. And for us, for instance, for the festival, having a touristic audience, an audience coming from outside of Montreal, has always been important. More than about 50% of our public comes from outside of the region. And that's what has been sustaining the festival. So can we sacrifice that in the shorter or midterm? I'm not sure, because part of our funding is also linked to having the festival developed as a touristic destination. So, you know, there's kind of deep transformations that we need to embrace, and we're kind of split between, you know, old habits and knowing that we have to develop new ways of connecting. From UTech, I think we're a bit lucky, because since we have those branches in different places, we are global, because the model of MUTEC is having, as I said before, a context that is replicated in different places, where the different players on site develop a relationship with their local communities. So having a MUTEC in Buenos Aires is actually an amazing tool to develop the Argentina artistic scene. So through the network, we connect to that scene. And the same happens with Mexico, the same happens with Tokyo, the same happens with Barcelona. So we have this global network in place. And in that sense, we've been lucky. But what remains totally open now is, how is that going to evolve, taking into consideration some changes that do need to happen.
Thank you for all your insightful comments on the future to come and unfold, I would say. Also, I think some of you already knows about what ZER01 is planning to, and some already have experience with ZER01 through workshop. So it would be good to learn more about what could be the strengths of ZER01 to be distinguished from other creative platforms, like, you know, that will be a great running from your expertise and your you know, the previous experiences. Someone who have been workshop with ZER01 creators maybe can start.
That's a very interesting question. I think ZER01. I mean, I was honored to be part of this ZER01 quest from actually 5 minutes before they started the endeavor. I remember I was in the environment where it was still smelling from the carpenter's work, and the stress was in the air because the opening was the day afterwards. I won. At that time, I already say big congratulations to the founders of ZER01, to Hyundai Motor Group and Hyundai Motors, because ZER01 has already actually in its DNA everything that it needs. It has this openness to create a neutral environment, a space where individuals with whatever backgrounds would, in a very authentic way, create encounters to create a new culture of collaboration among different fields. Indeed, there is an interest there is for sure a commercial interest hidden, but I think that is not a sin, and that is nothing hidden. It is totally clear if an initiative like ZER01 is created by a commercial acting, global acting company. But nevertheless, a shift can only be and the challenge to make these huge companies acting global, acting different, is really a huge challenge, and it is one of the major challenges to educate and to them and to help them also to do so. And I think with the initiative of ZER01, with this openness to bring together different skill sets, mindsets, and different cultures, it is the right basement for the challenges that we are already facing now, but we will even more face in the future. And it's about the existence of humankind. It is about the existence of the entities that still are very successful, but that they need to desperately position them new in the future after the big shifts took part. And yeah, 01 is a best practice sample. And I don't know what programs are currently running there due to this 2 years of silence, so to speak. But I am sure, and as far as I remember, the acting persons and protagonists there, I mean, the direction is set, the energy is right, and just please don't stop.
Thank you. We will continue. And Sabine?
Well, it's hard for me to say because I have never experienced the 01 festival yet physically. So I think, yeah, maybe also what Martin has said, I think it's the importance of, you know, enabling this playground, as you call it, for artists, enabling experiments, enabling critical voices. And that's always the role of art, you know, to put the finger on things that are maybe we are uncomfortable with. And I think that's a great challenge and also opportunity.
Yeah, for me, I'm a bit like in Sabine's position also. Actually, I just recently found out about 01, and I only reconstructed an image of what it is by navigating on the website, and try to grasp what is at work there. What I, let's say, recognize is this, again, you know, keyword is a context. There is certain, or platform in this case, there's this will to develop a platform. What I would say, again, like, the Mutek Festival is really geared towards enabling artists. And I think artists tend to grow if you nurture them. And I kind of see or sense that with 01, that there's this idea of creating a context. And I think what's really important is if you do create a context for the artists, the idea is to support them with means and time. And when I talk about means, it doesn't necessarily mean money, although, I mean, that's also an important factor, but it also means resources, know-how, like supporting the artist with a certain level of know-how, and to create time in the right environment for things to happen. And that's really important. As I said, like, the Mutek Festival has always been quite involved in showcasing new works, premiering new works and all that. But that new work, those new works need to come out of a certain context. And the better the context, the better the world, the new work is. So this idea, I mean, I guess we could see what is around the 01 or the playground you're creating as a sort of a new form of residency, where a lot of elements come into play and interconnect together. So I think it's really important to have locations like that.
Thank you. Would it be possible to imagine or suggest new types of collaborative acts between the platforms?
Yeah, I mean, we are very open to cooperation and also to co-curation. We have done that many times in the past very successfully. And I think what's really interesting is also from a sustainable point of view, you know, if we co-curate an exhibition together, we can reach a way bigger audience, showing it in Seoul, showing it in Basel, and maybe also other places. And then on the other hand, also kind of facilitating and nurturing artists, as we had coined it before. co-curating also means we can put our financial means together and facilitate the commissioning new works, for example, and in that respect also support artists to develop new ideas, maybe also for specific exhibition context. So I think that is a very interesting, and I find also very sustainable strategy. And maybe also the ongoing research project of this Goethe Institute that we have both been involved in, hybrid by nature, human-machine interaction. It has been a pure online exhibition and conference, but the idea is to take the project further and have also iterations in the physical space. So maybe that would also be a nice plan and idea to take the collaboration further.
Yes, great. For your reference, that two of ZER01 alumni were participating at those at that online exhibition recently.
That's the point. So that's already, the connection is there.
Mm-hmm. Great. So Elaine, would you like a second?
Well, a bit similarly. As I mentioned a few times, the festival is kind of an outlet for things to be showcased. And we are always interesting to be part of, let's say, nurture the development and the emergence of new works in any way possible. So we're always open to that form of dialogue. And what I think what's interesting is usually those works could, it's the end point is not only to be presented, let's say in Montreal. They would interesting works will end up being showcased in the different other locations, because we replicate the same kind of context that allows for the presentation of the work to happen. I mean, one thing I didn't mention so far so much is the fact that for us, what is really important is this we see ourselves as a transmission belt, or a belt to reach, to help artists reach an audience. And for us, the audience is a really important part of the equation. We do develop the festival program where we have different kind of series, different kind of venues, and we will have like a range of works going from more experimental and sometimes less accessible stuff to more accessible, larger public screenings or showcases, and we see that whole thing as a continuum. You know, some works that today are maybe more experimental, tomorrow they might be reach a larger audience. But for us, the audience is always quite important. So in that sense, that's why we also collaborate with research centers in Montreal, like Milieu, like Hexagram. Artists are not, could be found also in institutions and all that. And we see ourselves as this kind of a function in the ecosystem, as showcasing stuff that sometimes are developed in labs, but to help those works reach a public and audience. So for us, that's really important. And in that sense, we're always interested to know about new things being developed. The thing is we see our function happening, picking up stuff when there's a level of development of the processes that makes it so that the audience could be interested in the work. When it's too cryptic and all that, we think the festival, maybe the work is not ripe yet to reach the festival level and the audience. So we will pay attention to that more cryptic things and maybe just showcase that work when it reaches a certain level of maturity.
So the last but not least,
Last but not least, yes. So I'm totally on the page of what Sabine said. So there are within that what we are already representing many opportunities to create like food chains among us and beyond us for those we represent, but also for the sake of our own existence. But also there is this other aspect to not only reach for new audiences, but also for new partnerships beyond the traditional fishing areas that we normally are utilizing. And this is also that we have to strengthen what we could do in the relationship to economies, to the science, to the different field of science, as well as tourism, for instance. I think that this almost disappearing and this sensitivity and the situation, the fragile situation in where we are entirely and globally in, is opening also like new opportunities and also new needs outside of the art world, and those needs are, I think, potentially new areas we could enter. And new areas we could open for the individual artists as new business areas. But they all come with the openness of collaboration.
Thank you. I think we covered most of the the questions we had, and I'm so glad to have all of you and learn more about what Playground means as a platform to nurture players to take a risk freely with sustainability and solidarity in a hybrid format. This is the future to be unfold through our collaboration, hopefully. And I hope you all also enjoyed our first initiative talks.